Okay, so I'll repeat, because Steve Mansfield is not going to be able to join us, we will entertain a motion to move the executive session, which is item number 2, to occur at 5 o'clock when we have a conference call, and that, so we need to do that at 5. So if we could proceed with the rest of the agenda and move executive session till 5.
I'll make a motion to move executive session to 5.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So next item will be to approve the minutes of March 3rd.
I have a couple of changes. I guess I need to make a motion first, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of March 2nd.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, discussion.
Okay, number one, what I found on or what was sent to us on the website is not paginated, so I know Patty likes pagination. I got this other set right from the website, so they're not paginated. Okay, that's all right.
Which item is it?
There's more than one. Let's see. This would be under Senior Center Building Expansion.
Okay.
It should be little j, I think, not little I. Looks like II. Senior Center, Soundview, both were II.
What are you speaking of?
Okay, what I got on the website is not what you are looking at.
Yeah. Okay, I think it would be little 3 I's, I guess Roman numeral 3.
Well, let me look at what you have,
Okay.
and then we'll have to, I think you have to make sure that the website has the same version of these.
Well, I sent that to the town clerk, so I don't know what happens, but.
I don't know. Under, okay, so that takes care of that question then. Okay, under Soundview, Connecticut Water Company water line sewer discussion, which on this version is page 2, and on the website it looks like it's page 4. There were a couple things that we discussed that didn't make the meeting minutes. I'd like to add that Selectmen received the design proposal by Woodard and Curran dated January 2020. Selectman Nozel requested that the town attorney be contacted for a review. And Selectman Kerr concurred. I'd also like to add that Selectman Nozel asked if the Board of Selectmen have to approve Woodard and Curran under a bid policy. That didn't make it to the minutes.
Maybe we can borrow that.
That's really it, other than the pagination, which seems like the version is a little different.
All right.
The look or the format's different, that's all I think. Looks like
Okay,
they were
we'll ask
just the
Patty
same.
if she can insert that.
Okay.
Any others?
No.
All right, may we have a vote? All in favor of the minutes of March 2nd?
With those adjustments,
Right.
aye.
All right. Okay, the next item will be under projects, old business projects. The senior center building had a meeting which I did not attend. And I think they're also planning to have a meeting with up in Lyme with the first selectman and the Board of Finance chair, I'm sure the selectmen would be welcome to attend. I'm trying to, I don't have that date right with me, but it's coming up fairly shortly if meetings will be held. But I'm not aware that I've not heard back what happened at that meeting other than the agenda. So I don't know if anybody else heard anything, but they were going to be talking about approaching the boards of finance for the funding of the study.
I did attend the meeting, and what was my takeaway from the meeting is that they made a decision to go out for a request for qualification. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be working on that as opposed to a request for a proposal to try and bring in qualified engineers, architects with their recommendations on what to do at the senior center and whether to split out the needs assessment from the feasibility assessment, just get their expertise and their opinions. And the hope was that they could get the RFQ completed sometime in April.
Okay, and I think they've been encouraged to, within their membership, to have a number of, hopefully recruit some people to help figure out the needs assessment so that when they do ultimately hook up with an architect, that some of their preliminary work will be done and won't have to be orchestrated by the consultant. So we'll see how that pans out. The Soundview Connecticut water lines, that we're going to be talking about a number of those things at 5 o'clock, but I think what's important to talk about, the Mizzy Construction has started to work in Soundview on the water lines. They, as you know, they will be replacing 8-inch mains at the top of at the top of Swan and Portland Avenues, as well as north of 156. They'll be putting in 3 hydrants, and then they will be working on the lateral connections to the individual properties. They are using the town property near the police station for a staging area, which is very helpful for them. I may have mentioned last time that in return they'll help us with a road, boxing out a road, which can be used for a bus stop when they're done. So I think that's off to a good start. The documentation we'll be reviewing later has been an ongoing process, and we'll hopefully hear from our attorney later on more about that. I believe we're also agreeing in concept with Mr. Murata about an easement over his property so that the pipeline can pass through come across Swan and go across his dirt parking area to the north of the pavilion and to the north of Kokomo's, and then make its way to over Hartford Avenue and on down over Swan up to the pumping station. So that'll be a big help to have that accomplished. And so once these agreements are vetted by everybody, then we can get to work and approve them. We can also schedule a town meeting at some point in the future, don't know when. We've been discussing the logistics of trying to have a town meeting under the current circumstances, and it obviously is not feasible until till we get the all clear signal on that. But nonetheless, we can still do the preparatory work. So I think we're more or less up to date on that, subject to reviewing these documents.
Tim, I just wanted to clarify, at our last meeting on the 2nd, we did not know about the road agreement. I mean, when Frank Pappalardo was here, he mentioned that maybe that could happen.
The which agreement?
We didn't have a discussion about Mitzi, is that right?
Mitzi
Construction doing a road for the bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a discussion, but you had indicated, as you mentioned last time, we didn't.
Yeah.
Subsequent to our meeting, you indicated, at least to me, I don't know, but Chris, that they've agreed to do it.
Yeah.
I did send an email to the Soundview Sidewalk group, and I know that's next on the agenda, but it kind of relates to your comments, that you got this information from the construction team on that. So I just wanted to make it clear that we didn't discuss it last time.
Yeah, well, as they were setting up, it was proposed that they might help us out with that while they had all that machinery there, and they agreed. We don't have the specs or where it'll start, where it'll end, but in concept they are willing to do that as a goodwill gesture. So we need to know exactly where, obviously, but we probably have a few months before that can be accomplished. So we'll hopefully have the state give us a property line or a right-of-way limit, and then we can decide where that bus stop should be situated and how the road might work. They would box in the road with the gravel, and then we would have to pave it. But while they have all their machinery there, they're willing to do that. So it's kind of a handshake at this point. Soundview sidewalks themselves, you mentioned there was an overflight with a drone.
Right. At our last meeting, I shared with the board that the engineering firm had informed our committee that they were going to, the engineering firm, BSC Group, was going to use a drone to do the flights and develop the plans accordingly. And we had been told at our last meeting, which was the end of February, that we'd be notified when the drone flew. We were not notified, but the drone did fly, and BSC Group is working on the plans so that at our next meeting, which was supposed to be the end of March, we'd have some plans, preliminary plans to look at the committee level for Shore Road and again, Shore Road between Cross Lane, the police department, and Hartford Avenue, Upper Hartford Avenue for the sidewalks. And that's where we stand today.
Okay, very good. The next item is COVID-19. It's been quite a week or so looking at all the deteriorating circumstances, and we've either been conference calls with emergency management. There's been the Council of Governments had a conference call, and the governor has been acting with some executive orders. So we have put on our website information, and we've tried to communicate with the employees and with the population. As I say, we were hoping to have the Director of Health speak to our local nonprofits here today, amplified explaining what's going on. I think we've all seen from the TV and other sources what's planned. It seems like the testing will become easier and more prevalent as these kits are delivered. I think many of the communities have announced that they're going to have pretty much close the doors to the public with the town halls, and then there might be appointments for certain things, allowing the public in on that kind of a basis. So I think we might evaluate a draft document here about how we'd like to handle it. I think in the community, the restaurants will be closed to diners within the restaurants, but food will be taken out. That'll be permitted. The gatherings, I think the governor initially said 250 should be the max. I think now it's 50. So I think there's a general shrinking down of congregating people together. I don't believe New London County has a reported confirmation, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one, because the testing is far from complete. So I think in our town, the senior center is closed, the schools are closed, the library is closed, and I think youth service, they've been canceling things. I think with respect to the senior center, I believe those who go there for midday lunch could still get lunch, but not consume the lunch within the senior center building. They could come to the kitchen door, so-called, and get a meal, but not go into the senior center to consume it. Meals on Wheels will continue. So there's a general, quite a specific effort to minimize having people congregate. There is an executive order sample here that we could consider. I'll read it. Whereas the governor of the state of Connecticut has issued a declaration of public health civil preparedness emergency as a result of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak, and whereas under the Connecticut Statute 28-81, the chief executive officer of a municipality has the power and the duty to take such actions as he deems necessary to mitigate the major disaster or emergency, and whereas COVID-19 is a respiratory illness that can spread from person to person, and whereas older adults and those with serious chronic medical conditions are at higher risk of getting very sick from this illness. Now therefore, I, Timothy Seagrizzle, Chief Executive Officer of the Town of Old do hereby order and direct: 1. All municipal buildings and facilities shall prohibit the use of such facilities for non-governmental activities and events effective immediately. That all municipal boards and commissions shall suspend their meetings unless they have urgent business before the board, in which case they may meet via telephone or video conference only, effective immediately. Any remote meetings must continue to meet the FOI law and be accessible to the public. 3, that the town of Old Lyme will close to the general public. That town hall will close to the general public except by appointment for the protection of town employees. Town businesses will continue to be conducted by the town employees, and the public may communicate their needs by phone, mail, or email. The restrictions outlined in this executive order shall be in effect until future notice, I would say, unless modified or superseded by another executive order. So we can discuss this if we think this is a good idea or modifications to it. I think many towns, I've got a list of I don't know, it looks to be like 40 or 50 towns that have implemented some restrictions. Not sure exactly what each town is doing, but I think Lyme is closed, and Essex, I believe, is, and so forth. So I talked with the town clerk, which is one office that probably has a lot of activity that needs to continue, and certainly title searching and the like can be done remotely. People can check records via the internet. If deeds are to be recorded, they could be delivered, and somebody from the town clerk's office could receive them at the door as opposed to having the public come in. There are certain things like dog licenses in June, but that's a bit farther off. So I think we would have people call in if they really needed access to something, and that might be arranged. The tax collector could certainly receive things through the mail or delivered to the front door without having to come in. If there was a problem to be discussed, that might be done via the telephone. So land use area, certainly that would have to be worked out, but I imagine if there were appointments out in the field, perhaps the building official or the zoning enforcement officer, when he starts in April 1st, could meet people on site or off premise to handle that. Again, if there was something critical, an appointment could be made, and subject to conditions, somebody might be able to come in and talk. But the idea is to restrict as much as possible public interaction, because that's how this thing spreads. So we want to keep the doors open for business, so to speak, but not just have the public coming in the way they have. And once the testing is more thorough and we are confident that the risk levels would be less, then I think we could get back to normal. But it seems that, and maybe the governor will do this afternoon on his own, but it would seem to be a wise step to have people come to the building that work here, but not have the public come in. So that's a proposal. It's hot off the press, so you haven't had much chance to look at it, but that's the intent.
Tim, I know that Dave Roberge, our emergency management director, is here. Do you want to include him in this discussion at this time?
David, do you have anything you'd like to add? Sure. Yeah, come on up and we'll. David Roberge, Roberge.
Well, to be able to kind of summarize what Tim said, as everybody's been watching the news lately, the novel coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19, has been spreading extensively throughout the country. State of Connecticut, Governor Lamont has issued a statewide declaration of emergency based upon public health and civil preparedness. That being said, that activity has now stood up some of the state response framework to be able to assist municipalities as needed as this event continues to unfold. My recommendation to the board is to discuss and think about declaring a localized emergency here in the town of Old Lyme. Basically, due to the threat of the global pandemic of COVID-19 associated with the norovirus currently affecting the town of Line and other municipalities. It's creating a shortage of personal protective equipment and other essential supplies. And due to this public health and civil preparedness emergencies, its public health effects and material shortages could jeopardize public safety. And in order to limit the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus and to protect the public safety within the town whole line, I recommend that you declare a localized state of emergency for this act. The events going after this, it would allow us to unify all the volunteer resources that we do have in the community with the non-governmental organizations, such as the church groups and the civil groups, and also be able to better coordinate energies and efforts and responses throughout the community. Also, be able to better support our public safety partners with Connecticut State Police, our local constabulary force, our fire department, and our EMS, along with Public Works, to assist them in dealing with any threats or any issues that come up after relating around this COVID-19. Took the liberty of drafting a localized declaration. I'd like to present that to the board for discussion.
The only one you have to.
Beg your pardon?
Do you have any other ones?
No, I just have to go out and make a couple copies.
Now, what I read here is,
What you read there,
this earlier one.
the earlier one was basically executive orders that could be developed or issued.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Nicole. That's an example of what executive actions could be implemented as we continue to deal with the COVID-19, being specific. One of them being taking a look at how we're going to restrict, how to protect the employees of the town along with the general public of the community by implementing some restrictions or some control measures down the road. I believe you've listed 3 items on there. There's many other items that under a local declaration we would be able to start to work with and implement.
Would we possibly have both approved, or one or the other?
At this time, I'm suggesting that you discuss and cast an opinion on making a localized declaration to be the starting point. And then from there, we're able to stand up our response forces to come up with a list of objectives and plans to be able to support the community. And depending upon what those objectives are, we could turn around and implement specific actions such as executive orders to enact upon them.
Yeah, but these are 2 different items to
Correct.
talk about. So can we sign, it would still be fine to sign both, correct?
At this point in time,
Yes.
during this Board of Selectmen's meeting, I'd like you to get to discuss and recommend that we go into a local declaration. That way it gives the Chief Executive Officer, or Tim, the first selectman, the authority to move forward with future executive orders as needed.
Right, but I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But then that executive order is this, with closing the town hall to the public and everything. I mean,
That could be one. That was written as a draft. As an
but I'm saying
example.
if we sign both, we're covered.
The current draft that you have in your hand that was read,
This one is executive order. This one is the declaration of emergency.
the executive order
Yep.
was put together as a draft document. There are some revisions and changes to that. If you authorize that one today, we'd have, it's got some grammaticals and it's got some other issues into it.
So you don't want to close the town hall?
We do want to restrict the access of the public to town hall and along with all other municipal buildings.
That's what you're saying in the executive order.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think what I hear you saying, and this is what I've seen online, and I think we all got something from public health on this, that most of the towns are initially beginning the documentation effort by declaring a localized emergency, and then what follows up is executive orders. And to Chris's point, we can discuss what Tim just read and maybe make some additions to that if we get to that point. But you definitely need this to move forward.
I would like that to move
future
forward.
planning.
The local declaration gives me the opportunity as emergency management director to operate under our local emergency operations plan, which puts all of the available resources between the town and any available resources from the state at our disposal.
I guess the final paragraph in the local emergency is very broad, and it would probably permit any number of things.
Yes.
So this might be not necessary if you have this.
I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen give Tim Griswold, our CEO, the authority to sign the declaration of localized emergency for this civil preparedness event.
Well, I'll second that, but
No, okay, you want to discuss, move and seconded, discussion?
I just think they both should be signed. I mean,
Well, I
you
think
know, they're two separate
the
things.
further declared, it's pretty exercise those powers, functions, duties prescribed by state law and so forth. It seems that it gives pretty broad latitude as far as saying town hall could be restricted or the boards and commissions and so forth.
Well, I think that the declaration is good for the first responders and that stuff, and it needs to be signed. The second, the executive order is more detailed, telling about the town hall and stuff, which I think we can also sign.
Possible.
It's not like we don't.
Well,
Can't not sign one. They're two different things: executive order and a declaration.
So can we just work on the declaration now and then we'll
yeah,
work on
that
the other?
if you like the declaration, then we can discuss the executive order because the motion has to do only with the declaration.
Okay.
Localized emergency. So, been moved and seconded. May we have a vote? All in favor of the motion that authorizes me to sign that? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, do you want to? I don't. You don't think the second one is necessary, or?
If I can continue,
All right.
since you agreed and you implemented the localized emergency, this requires us, as I said earlier, to work out of the emergency operation plan. So at this point in time, I want to present this as the assessment that we're going to work out of the EOP, or the emergency operations plan for the town, which gives us the opportunity to utilize our support functions within the community.
And that would that include the things that are mentioned in the executive order, or is it broad enough to allow those?
This gives guidance on how we're going to function and operate forward in regards to the emergency.
And how is that going to be?
It'll be I'm proposing a unified command structure between the first selectman or the CEO of the town of Lime, along with this director of public health, of legislative public health, due to the fact that it's a public health emergency. And we would operate under a command structure with them.
Well, I think what Chris is getting at is that we definitely want to implement,
You want to implement the
and if
executive
that
orders.
would fall under the
Yes.
EAP, then that would be fine. You think that does?
I recommend it.
And this looks like it needs a second motion. Let me read it then. It's the Town of Old Lyme Emergency Operations Plan, whereas Timothy C. Grizzle for Selectman, Town of Old Lyme, Connecticut does find that COVID-19 public health and civil preparedness emergency currently affecting the Town of Old Lyme requires the activation of the Emergency Operations Plan. Now, therefore, it is hereby declared and ordered that the Emergency Operations Plan of the Town of Old Lyme is now activated and all personnel ordered to perform in accordance therewith. It is further declared and ordered that a copy of this action be forwarded to DEMIS,
Which is the Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security.
How many other towns are doing this around here?
Westbrook
This
just,
step.
Westbrook just declared theirs this afternoon. I heard that Saybrook is in the process of doing it, their town, and numerous other communities. Montville has, and numerous other communities around the side. One of the advantages of a localized emergency, even though the governor claimed a statewide declaration, in the event that if any funding streams or reimbursement opportunities come from the federal government down the road, by having a localized declaration, it would definitely put this community and other communities in the queue for qualification for reimbursement. And additionally, it protects our volunteer forces, which we have so many of across the board, between volunteer EMS, and all of the non-governmental organizations that are willing to step up to assist.
So this is rather standard in the procedures. Does this mean, Dave, will open up our EOC?
At this point in time, I don't anticipate a full opening on it. Right now, we're just kind of running remotely or partial operation. I've been running it from the office here, and I'm running it from cell phones and emails mostly, and internet. If events start to staff out where we need to have a fully functional place to operate under, then we would move it to the EOC and activate it fully.
Okay, and this would give you,
This
Tim,
gives us
the authority to
yes.
go that route? Okay.
Yeah, well, unlike a hurricane or something, there's no jeopardy of being here, it seems, physically. It's just, might have that option, but hopefully we could carry on in here when... All right, well, you've heard what Dave had to say. Do we want to entertain a motion on the Emergency Operations Plan activation?
Make a motion to approve the emergency operation plan.
One second.
We have moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, very well, thank you.
Now going to the executive order. By implementing these two prior actions, the executive order gives us the opportunity to discuss and come up with planning on specifically when you want to close town hall. Right now, it's tentatively to be open tomorrow. I would say tomorrow morning, sit down and start putting plans in session to possibly look to close it or get the word out to the public in advance and possibly close it as of noon on Wednesday. This would give the people in the world the opportunity to, one, hear about it across multiple news platforms, two, be able to allow them to start planning for it, and three, gives us the opportunity to start coming up with alternate means of how we're going to support the public with municipal governance.
We'd have to modify it because it says effective immediately
Right.
in 2 of the 3 conditions. But is all this action permitted under these 2 things? So we don't necessarily have to approve this then,
You
right?
don't have to move it forward. You don't have to approve it. The response structure that we're now in gives us the opportunity for the city if we could recommend closures and recommend items and just approve them and authorize them through executive order. As I mentioned earlier about a unified command structure, because it's a public health emergency, being able to have the command structure from Ledgelight, because Steve Mansfield is covering so many other towns, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to act as a commander or an overseer or overall participant in the town of Lone Lime. We've reached out to Steve Mansfield earlier, and he has a few individuals that he hasn't named yet to be able to place as a liaison so the town of Lone Lime can move forward. I recommend that the Board of Selectmen consider placing a liaison in play also, so we can continue to move and respond forward. And like that to be one of the Board of Selectmen. Chris? Okay. You can decide that one among yourselves.
Well, we have one Ledgelight person here fairly consistently, and a second one which comes in, not for this purpose, but they do enforcement or whatever that they do. Would those personnel be able to be administrative liaisons too?
As of this afternoon, I'm under the understanding that both of those individuals are being pulled back to the London operations. They're closing their satellite offices. Ledgelight is closing their satellite offices and bringing all their personnel back to operate out of Ledgelight.
Okay.
So we're not having town coverage?
We have town coverage, we just don't have town presence right now.
Consolidating into London. All right, well, Dave has talked about this, giving a little more time for the public to access town hall before the restricted type, no public in the building type of thing. Do we want to entertain that? He suggested Wednesday at noon. I guess if we were to communicate something, could we use that Everbridge system to notify?
There's multiple platforms that we could decide to do this on. Between media, press releases, posting on the website, doing the mass notification to the community via phone or text by Everbridge, putting it in, giving us an opportunity to put it in the press. With a Wednesday initiation date, it gives us a good 24 hours to be able to push this out first thing tomorrow morning and have all the media pick it up to be able to market and advertise it for us.
So why don't we just do it at 4 o'clock tomorrow? If the social awareness is, why don't we just do it at 4 o'clock? You have all day tomorrow to work on it, and then tomorrow at 4, that's it. Why even do 3 hours on Wednesday? It's
We can do it that way also.
more chance of our personnel getting contact.
Give them one day of
Yeah,
last minute walk-ins, like last minute shopping.
yeah. I mean, we have the website, you have the bridge, the news media's here. I mean, we're going to have plenty of notification.
All right.
And this would allow town department heads to meet or discuss with their staff plans going forward, like Public Works. And one of the things, obviously, we need to talk about is if people stay home, how we're going to pay those people, all those things, how we deal with social services and all that. So I would expect under these orders that the emergency team, whatever we're going to call them, would still be in frequent communication going forward, making these decisions so that, and obviously it's including Tim as the CEO, can share that with staff.
Yes.
Well, I think we would, so long as people were feeling physically well and so forth, people could still come in and do their jobs, just wouldn't have the public coming in. Be a good opportunity to catch up on things and deal on the phone and so forth. So one would hope that, I think you see people at the school coming in every day, still
Yes.
working behind the scenes, so.
But that could change.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, if people start being affected.
And again, one of the goals that the federal government and state government are trying to implement is that social distancing. The opinion from the medical experts is that we can eliminate the spike of person-to-person transmission and possible infection, thus trying to reduce and minimize the inflow of affected individuals who would be seeking medical help in the hospitals without overtaxing the hospitals with a large number of affected persons. By doing social separation, staying home, isolating, trying to minimize your contact and minimize your distance, practicing personal hygiene, washing hands, don't touch your face, you've heard it all over the news. What that does is kind of flatten out the exposure risk, which makes it a little more manageable than having a giant spike with everybody in 2-3 weeks experiencing the symptoms and rushing to the hospital looking for treatment.
I've seen Dave on the some of the other towns. They've closed town hall to the public, had meeting or access to town hall through appointment only, and they gave specific hours, like 9 to 2, which then allows town hall, especially if you're at minimal staff, a couple hours before they close to get kind of caught up or do anything they had to do as a result of work that day. I kind of like that idea that they have by appointment only with a schedule, so that also communicates that out to people when they have to call, when staff would be available, at least for now. Would you see having like a central, would you see people just calling typically as they do now to various departments to make appointments, or would you see sort of a clearinghouse telephone number?
I would say because town hall employees will still be functioning their jobs within town hall, to be able to reach out to land use, I want to drop a set of plans off. Okay, you can't, we're restricting people to the building. If you're just going to drop plans off, you can come to the front door and someone will meet you and take the plans or take your application.
Right.
Looking at the assessor's office, looking for walking in and wanting to get a line card for a specific parcel, or to find out what the tax assessment is in detail on a specific parcel of property. That's a phone call to the assessor, who can be working in building or out of building, to be able to provide that information, pull it electronically, package it, and ship it electronically without the person ever having to come in. Depending upon where we stand, right now we're standing in the middle of pre-tax season. The tax official's office could, or the tax collector could turn around and do more of a mail type inflow for payments. And if there's an individual who needs a tax lien release or getting a tax stamp on motor vehicle transfer, something like that can be done either by appointment or outreach creating a kiosk area somewhere in the building where someone comes in, is met by a town employee, having them stay there, go get the appropriate office that you're looking for, have that person come out, maintaining a distance, and trying to meet their needs.
Appointment only stuff, yeah.
Or appointment, mostly appointment only.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
I mean, there's many different avenues on how we can achieve this, and we have been speaking to the department heads to see what their opinions are, what their thoughts are on doing appointment versus kiosking or electronically. And the majority of them say that the majority of it can be done electronically. And for those with face-to-face needs, we can adapt as needed. So we just haven't finalized how we're going to do that by appointment and kiosk, or just walk and keep the door knocking, and we might have somebody meeting at the door.
Okay, I'll give you that, Dave, your signature.
Thank you.
Dave, meetings for boards and commissions, committees, how do you see that? I mean, we're closing it to the public. Would that preclude public meetings unless it's urgent? And then I know the governor's declaration had some requirements.
A town attorney sent us something, and we can have meetings electronically. We're looking into that Zoom capability where video conferencing, but short of that, you could have a simple conference call, but it has to be accessible to the public. So I think Michelle is looking into a service through Connecticut Computing where you could have this set up so that you could have the public as well as the board or commission people, and you could regulate, you could make sure that the public don't interrupt. They would have to wait until public comment, and then their comments could be heard, but they would not be able to speak during the process of the meeting itself. So we're trying to get a handle on that. There's a service apparently that's a freebie for 90 days, and so we're going to look into that. It might be a little training required to understand how to operate the thing. But the point is, the record has to be, if it's an audio, it's got to be kept much like this, recorder, and put on a website. And during the course of the meeting, the public has to have access to the meeting itself. So I think we can accomplish that. Boards and commissions and committees which don't have pressing business could simply defer for a month or 2 months perhaps if there's really not much to be discussed. But for those that are obliged to do their business, then we would work something out. And even the selectmen would have to think about that. So it seems like there's some technology that would help us.
Any other questions?
We appreciate that. Representative, do you want to add anything? You're all set? Okay. Okay, good.
Everything you said was correct.
Excellent.
Change the date on this, for nothing, we don't have to worry about the date.
On these two things?
On the executive order?
Oh, you have those?
For closing the town hall, whatever,
That
18th morning?
That will be redrafted and
Okay.
implemented probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And again, that was submitted as a draft document just to give you some review and research.
Yeah.
I need to make copies and send this off to the state. All I have is the declaration and the utilization of the emergency.
All right, you're going to give those back to me then when
Yes, I
you...
will.
All right. All right, anything more on this? Mr. Carney, you want to come forward?
Dave, can you turn that?
Wait, here. Yeah, because I want to get the trooper too. Representative Carney, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add, certainly agree with everything Mr. Rivera said. I would just add, certainly pay attention to the governor's press conferences. He appears to be, and press releases, he appears to be putting just about one out every day with an update on how many folks have tested positive for the coronavirus, plus any new executive orders as part of his public health emergency. So that could potentially affect the things you all do and affect town hall. So just keep an eye out for that. Usually, he put one out this morning that will go into effect tonight regarding restaurants and gyms and bars and places like that. But usually he'll have one anywhere between 3 and 6 p.m. on a daily basis, updating the state and also including new restrictions.
Great. Okay. Keep an eye on that. Thank you. It's approaching 5, but I did want to have our new state trooper, Matt Weber, come and say hello. Matt lives in town, and he has been a trooper for quite a while, and he certainly knows the town, being a resident. And we're very pleased to have him join us. Matt, come on up and maybe just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your career and so on, and we'll give you that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Matthew Weber. I've been with the State Police since 2008. I just got assigned to the resident trooper job in Hawaii. It's a job that I've wanted for a very long time, so I'm thrilled to be here. With me, you get a package deal. You get my canine partner, Taz. He's a 6.5-year-old German Shepherd. He's also cross-trained in narcotics as well. I've introduced him to all the school children, and they all seem to love him, and they know who he is, and they forget who I am already. So it's a great tool to bond with the community. So right now, I'm just kind of transitioning everything over. Just kind of getting my feet wet and getting to know everybody. I've worked with the officers for the last 12 years, most of them, so we have a really good rapport. Just looking forward to building the community relations and anything I can do to help out.
Oh, we really look forward to having you.
Thank you.
Help us out.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Would there be a time that, working with Tim, you could join us to discuss our summer?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, because we've done some things over the years that, including parking and working on the kiosk and all that. So it would be good to have all that discussed. And if we're going to have the Rangers and all those discussions we typically have, but we haven't yet had, and we may be delayed a little bit with this emergency.
Yep. Whenever you're ready, I'm available.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will have to go into executive session. We're hopefully going to get Attorney Michael Carey on the telephone, Rich Prendergast on the phone, possibly a representative from Woodward and Kern, and let's see, there's one other. So if people want to hang around, well, we can open the door when we're concluded, and we'll resume the agenda. I guess we'll stop that.